Yeah, I was gonna set the tone for the session with like an introduction before we dive into it.
Okay,
So I
sure.
don't know if you can have a quick intro of yourself. I could do mine as well if you want that.
Yeah. Okay. I go first.
Okay.
Okay. So, my name is Reuben Umunna, as you may already know.
Absolutely.
Um, I run I run a business out here, an energy business out here in Washington D.C. and
Cool.
um, so it's something I started a couple of months ago. So it's still in infantry stage. So at this point, I'm doing all the heavy lifting, trying to fully operationalize the company. So recently, we did sign a consulting contract with one of the biggest solar equipment manufacturer here in the U.S. So
Oh,
we
wow.
will be advising them on a couple of issues, and this draws from the experience that I have had so far working out here in DC as as an engineer in a solar company. So I'll go back to I'll take a backtrack a little bit, and from this point go back to my educational career and how I got here in the first place. So um, I came to the United States and through a student program um, and attended John Hopkins University and majored in energy resource and environment. Now, this is after I was transitioning from the aerospace industry. So before
Aerospace.
then, yeah, so before then, I used to work with the Nigerian government, um, um, the space industry in Nigeria, and I did a couple of projects. I was part of the design. I've been heavy in engineering, so I was part of the design for Nigeria Star 2, Nigeria Star X that was designed and launched in 2011. So I was part of that team. I worked on the propulsion system, and yeah, so and I also do hold a master's degree from a UK university and a PhD from Japan. So
Oh,
after all of this, I wanted to get very fundamental. It's cool to design spacecrafts and all of that, but
absolutely.
I wanted to do something that was more fundamental. I felt like we had huge problems in Nigeria. People don't have houses. Portable drinking water is still a problem. Electricity, huge problem. I mean, space is cool, but I just wanted to do something more fundamental, and I transitioned my career to the energy. So I just came over to John Hopkins and did that. Yeah.
Well, thanks for that. I think that pretty much
Mhm.
answered the first question I was going to ask you around how did you get into the energy space? What are the professional parts, academic parts that you might have taken that got you to this state, and how did it sort of shape your decisions coming into this energy space? But I think you've pretty much given an overview of that. I'm not sure there's need to delve further into that. So,
Okay.
talking about the industry now, just a quick one. How long have you been in the energy space?
So I would say I've been in the energy space for 3 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting. And it's been mostly DC or DC, Nigeria. Still trying to put together the Nigerian presence, or
Well,
maybe
I had a stint. I
different
had a stint.
locations.
I had a stint in power the PCN in Nigeria. So
Oh, wow.
I know. Yeah. So I had a stint there, and after that, was when I went into the space industry and then came back. But I would say my experience. I'll count my concrete experience as those that I have spent here in DC.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that's a really good one. I mean, so obviously, if you're already at that point where you're activating an MOU with the biggest solar producer in America, you're clearly on top of the I mean, you're clearly on top of the ladder in the industry. So, if I would quickly throw this to you, what would you say are like the critical success factors getting to this point? And I mean, so imagine there's somebody coming into the space now, coming fresh and wants to understand what does it take to get get to the top there where they can comfortably put out their solutions or put out their offerings? What are the critical success factors you will identify from your own experience and you could offer as an insight to whoever wants to come in at this point?
Okay, so I mean, if if you're asking me the question from the from and for me to view from the lens from the American lens, it's going to be different. If I'm viewing from the
Oh,
Nigerian lens, it's going to be different.
okay.
So
So I'll give you the opportunity to look into both. I mean, to just give an overview of both lenses. Let's
okay, so I'll look at it first of all from the American lens, and from the American
absolutely.
lens, I'll look at it from two sub lenses. The first lens is the, from the say business to business, and and from business to customer, if I would put it that
Uh,
way. So coming into this space in the American from the American market first, it's important to understand the policy frameworks, within which the energy sector um, flourishes or is deemed to flourish in a couple of years, right? And is know exactly where you want to plug in. So looking at the value chain, there's the manufacturing, there's the training, there's a huge deficit on people that needs to get down and do the job, right? And there's also the distributed energy resources part. There's a utility part, so it's quite huge. So first of all, you have to figure out what niche you want to be in, and you have to be clear about it. So if we figure that part out, um, in my own case, I'm interested in solar panels. That's because I'm Nigerian, and I feel like at some point, or that I know that at some point in future, I definitely would move to Nigeria and try and do something to see what I can do to 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 to, to be part of the team solving Nigeria's energy problem. So it's good to understand the policy framework. So part of the reason why I chose to remain in DC is because the policy here strongly supports the uptake of renewable energy. So your job is almost half done when you're in the right space. You know you're in the right space, and you know that it's just only a matter of time, right? So the policy frameworks here, it supports a lot of solar uptake. So and that's going to continue from now to the next 16, 20 years. So recently, Professor Biden just signed an act, which is the Inflation Reduction Act, IRA, and that act sort of gives tax breaks to people installing solar, or to people installing energy efficiency products, or even purchasing electric vehicles, right? So that's a huge opportunity there. So it means that if I put, for instance, if I put solar panels on the roof of my house, if I mean, I get a federal tax credit of around 30%. Now that's huge, and that's a huge incentive. And this is not talking about the um, this excludes the energy that I get from it, right? That's mine, but I still get a tax credit, and I still get what's called the SREX that drives the adoption of solar, which is the solar
Yeah.
renewable energy credits. So I mean, you have to understand all of these things, especially in the United States, where um, policies make a huge difference. They make a huge difference, and their impact is really deep and penetrating. So knowing that space, identifying what you want to do, and positioning yourself is very, very key. So if you go setting up a company, say in a state like Georgia, where they do not have a renewable um, portfolio standard, I mean, you're going to be there, and you will struggle. You will struggle because there's no you know state policy framework that sort of drives the adoption of solar. So your company is going to struggle. So that's on one side. So that's for the United States side. For Nigeria, now this is how I'm thinking about Nigeria. So there's a huge market. If you think about, um, I think, and the way I think about it is, for the developed countries like in the US, China, Japan, the average consumption. energy consumption per capita, it's somewhere around 6, 7, 8, 900, right? For Nigeria, it's 140. No, less than 140. It's about, yeah, 140.
Wow.
140. So now, if we are ever going to develop, right, which I know we will industrialize, we need energy, right? So for now,
Absolutely.
we have a huge energy
That's right.
poverty. So we definitely would need that uptake, that increase in energy, right? And the thing is, there's no way we can go from 0 to 100 because we don't have the money to build out the infrastructure. That's going to cost billions. So today, the total lines, I mean, in terms of high voltage and low voltage lines we have in
Three.
Nigeria, is about 12,000 kilometers, right? And
Yeah.
I was reading a
That's
study that was projecting that to completely wire Nigeria, we need about additional 12,000 lines. Now, this excludes the fact that the 12,000 that we have currently in Nigeria are, are old, are obsolete. So Nigeria
absolutely
has one of the highest
necessary.
losses, one of the highest losses. So even the 12,000 that
Absolutely.
we're talking about, over time, we need to also replace them. That will give you,
Absolutely.
now I'm talking about the problems now, right? These problems are
Yeah.
also on the flip side, huge opportunity. So now back taking stepping back a little bit. Now to go from where we are now to completely electrifying the country, um, the, we don't have the finance or the wherewithal to be able to say, okay, you know what, we want to wire the whole country this year. That's going to
Yep.
cost billions and billions. We can't do that because there are other things that we have to invest our money in, right? So
So,
there's going to be at some while we do the electrification and the wiring of Nigeria. I used to use wiring just to make it, a lot to connect with. While we do the wiring, distributed energy resources is a way. So that's like, standalone systems that don't connect to the grid, right? So people living in rural areas or far off from the grid, where it's going to cost a lot of money to connect them to the grid.
absolutely.
Standalone solar systems will be the answer, right? So, and that's a huge market. 40% of people in rural areas aren't connected. I can't remember the number right now, but I think about 40% thereabout of Nigerians are also not connected, are also not don't have access to electricity. Now that's a huge market. And I tell you, within the next 10, 15 years, this sector is going to blossom. The value chain is going to blossom from building out the structures or IPPs, independent power producers, and all of that. If that's the way you want to go to, all of these sectors is going to blossom. And if you're jumping in there, I mean, that's one sector. So I say the distributed energy because it's much easier. Is That's the way to go. Currently, especially for residentials and low demand sectors. So that's the way to go, and the uptake is going to increase. And this is importantly true for Nigeria, the where the geographic where we have a lot of space, and we have a lot of space. It's not like the Asian cities where lots of people are packed in a very small area, where it's easy to completely electrify the regions where they're having a deep penetration of 90% connectivity. In Nigeria, we have a
No.
huge space on the one hand. On the other hand, we have poor economic activity. So where are we going to get the money to be able to do this? That's two. Thirdly, we do not have the technology. It means that most of these inverters that we need, say for the solar systems, or even the energy system at large, the transformers, the inverters, the solar panels, almost the whole thing that has to do with technology has to come from abroad. Now, now put these three things together. First of all, we have a huge geographical space, and population density is very low. On the other on the middle side, we have low economic activity, and on the third part is that we're not a manufacturing nation. So if you look at all of these things, you see that the odds are really stacked against us. but be that as it may, we must fight forward. And I see the solar space or the distributed energy resource as as a point, as a transition point, where first of all people will have to be connected using using solar before maybe the next 50, 70 years, or maybe less, before they're able to be connected to the grid.
Okay, I think that's been really helpful. Thanks so much. So there are two things I'll probably come back to you on, but there are some key questions I need to ask you first. So one is
Mm.
around the energy transition, especially with regards to Nigeria. The other thing is around the I know you've been touching on it bit by bit, but I think I'll come back at some point to delve into that, which is on the enabling environment. Some of the necessary success factors that needs to be in place for the market to scale and for the market to be successful in Nigeria. But the next thing I want to ask you now is, I mean, looking at the industry, looking at the local space, looking at the global space, what are the sort of encouraging trends that are coming up now and opportunities that are already available in the sector that could be taken advantage of, could be someone can take advantage of, and how would you advise somebody who is just coming into that space to position themselves to take advantage of those opportunities? Most importantly, to identify these trends, because obviously, I mean, some of those trends changes as well.
Okay, so there's a lot of benefit that's accruing from the fact that the world is going solar, right? And China is a big part of this. So around 2007, before China came into the mix, in terms of manufacturing, the cost of solar panels were really high. I'm not going to quote a figure now, but I would say they were probably something around 80% or even 90% higher than they were in 2007. Now, looking at the prices today, in some countries, like in the United States here, solar energy is already at parity, grid parity with other forms of energy. When you levelize it, so it means that the cost of solar over a period of time, and the cost of, say, a gas-fired plant over a period of time, if you levelize over a period of time, the prices are quite competitive. And the reason for that is because there's been a lot of uptake of solar, right? And economy of scales is beginning to play. Is finding out China is finding out efficient ways of building these panels cheap. For laggards like Nigeria and rest of African countries, we're hopping in, but we're going to see more penetration of solar energy within the next couple of years. So we are coming in. We didn't need to get in at the point where 10 years ago, when the prices were high. Now, because more people are taking it, the prices are falling far more. So we're getting there. So it's going to cost us less, for sure, than it would have cost us 10 years ago. And these prices are still going down. Over the next years, we're going to see them come down and further down. So that's something that's really, really very, very, that's quite a very, very good thing for us now. And yeah, so that should definitely facilitate um, uptake of solar in Nigeria. That's one. Another trend is that the world is creating carbon markets now. There are global trying to create carbon markets for carbon, and um, as Nigeria, these structures are already been created in North America and in other parts of the world. So as we begin to evolve and grow, so it will be easier for us to just plug in into this system. So, and we wouldn't have to wait, or wouldn't have to spend so much time trying to figure out all of these things. And
Absolutely.
fully aware that two weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, Nigeria also launched its own carbon market structures. And I bet you, I haven't looked at it, but I bet you there's going to be a lot of things that's lifted from Europe or from America or from Asia, and sort of adapted. So again, that's something that's opening up, and and the fact that these problems are already being solved here makes it going to be a lot easier. And a lot of the engineering problems too that solar is presenting, that a lot of the Western countries are dealing with, how to integrate large scale solar into the grid, the ductile, the duct curve and all of that. So they're solving these problems. Germany is solving this problem. United States is solving this problem. And when Nigeria is ready to integrate solar at scale, I mean, it's going to be easier to understand the technicalities that are involved. We know a lot of these countries did not envisage this problem. They jumped into it and they're trying to solve the problem on the go. So
Absolutely.
Nigeria will not have to deal with that. That is one. I mean, there's a whole lot that these problems are being solved here, and it's about taking the solutions to Nigeria, adapting it to suit our what we're doing, and yeah. So, I mean, these are some of the things we look at, and on the policy side, tariffs, net metering. These are some of the ways that utilities will go in the future. If I put solar and decide to sell it, say I'm at work, right, and I'm not using the solar, but I have solar, and we know that solar can generate during the day. If I want to sell what I'm generating, send it back to the grid, get paid for it. Um, is that
Absolutely.
something that can happen, right? And if it's going to happen, how much am I going to be paid? Because I'm still
Yeah.
transmitting using infrastructure from the utilities. So these are some of the things that that even the countries of the West are currently dealing with. But these are huge opportunities for us. So, and that's policy, by the way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, interestingly, I mean, if I'm going to put it succinctly, I think it's safe to say, for once, it's good that we are playing catch up at this point in time because a lot of the heavy lifting is going on right now, which
Hmm.
most likely by the time we're ready to pick up things on the side, some of the studies around the integration, the market structures, possibly the technology efficiency, some of those things might have been on a much better scale at that point, and by then we're scaling into a market that is tested and proven in other climes, especially the developed ones, and that's a very interesting angle I never thought about. Thanks for
Yeah.
the insight.
Hmm.
So now I I think I just have one more question, which I'll leave for the last question. But the other things I wanted to ask you is around the energy transition plan and just transition. So there's the just transition, which is a different. I mean, looking at it from the energy perspective, there's a just transition. There's the energy transition itself, and officially, Nigeria put out a plan last week or launched its plan last week. Is it last week or
Last week,
this
yeah,
week?
it was last week. Yeah, it was last
Yeah.
week.
So Nigeria launched the plan for its energy transition plan. There's a pathway to energy access for 2030. There's a pathway for complete transition by 2060. And at the back of all of this beautiful graphs and well laid out plan is still the fact that funding and financing has to come through from the developed climb. So, I mean, just picking some insight from you now. Thankfully, you're working or you're set up in a developed climb. I mean, I'm just thinking around the success of this, especially the fact that it's hanging on the financing coming through from the developed world. I mean, just to get some insight from your side on that.
So this is really a very very huge sector, and I'm happy unpacking it. Within the time that we have. So first of all, I have a different perspective on the terminologies that we use, especially in Nigeria, right? So in the US, we speak about energy transitions. We speak about energy transitions,
Yep.
um, and when we speak about it, we speak about it from a pure from the pure meaning of transitioning. So the energy
Absolutely.
mix,
Just get out
energy
the
mix
fossils.
exactly. So the energy mix a couple of 10 years ago, when I did say it had up to in the US here, that's before pre-Trump, it had up to 20-30% of coal.
Wow.
Yeah, coal, nuclear, um, um, solar was really low. I mean, yeah, the whole spectrum, right? But coal was about 20%. Today, coal is coming down to about 10%. Now, yeah, and solar, both at utility scale or at the standalone, not standalone, but at the rooftop scale, has gone up to something around 10% from around probably 2-3%, right? And
Wow.
it's still increasing. Now, for me, using the terminology energy transition is clear, just the way I've explained it now, right? Because it's
Yeah.
transitioning away from fossil fuels, right? And they're shutting down the coal plants, especially Trump did a very Trump. Well, at some point they were shutting it down. Obama was doing that with the Clean Energy Act before Trump came in and started reversing it. But even when Trump tried to reverse it, it didn't gain traction. It didn't gain traction. So at the point, solar had already, started latching on, and it was clear on the path where it couldn't be stopped anymore. So in that context, saying energy transition is really clear because we're transitioning away from the use of fossil fuels. Right.
Yeah.
Now we come to Nigeria. Our full our entire generation capacity is about 12,000, but currently what we generate is less than 4,000 megawatts, right?
Yeah.
And um, for sure, I do know nuclear. We don't have nuclear. I know we don't have nuclear. Solar penetration is still very, very low. Hydro, and gas
Yeah.
constitutes the highest, right?
Yes.
So, and for one thing again, let me state that here is that the use of gas is not going, is not going out the window anytime soon. The gas is going to be around for the next 50, 60, 70 years. Coal
Yes.
is going out of the window. We do accept that. But for gas is not going anywhere. So, which means that in the next probably 100 or even, I mean, gas could still be there, you know. Um, so, I would, for Nigeria, when I saw energy trials, I asked myself, are we really transitioning? Because we still haven't built out our energy the way we want it. So we are still trying to build it out. But for in the United States or in the countries of the world, they've actually met their quota. It's filled up. They are able to meet the electricity demands 150%. What I mean 150%, I mean with extra that's stored. So it's not if the country demands wants 100, say 100 gigabytes, they have a 150 gigabytes. So there's an extra capacity that sits there and called up when required, right? So when the United States or in Europe or China that's heavy on coal talks about energy transition, we know what it means. They're trying to transition from you have a full capacity, so they're trying to flip some of them. But for Nigeria, there are probably somewhere around 10% of our demands. I mean, we're not transitioning, are we? No, we are actually we're not transitioning anything because we still have not even met our quota. So all we are trying to do is we are averting. So I would say sort of energy aversion or fossil fuel aversion. So instead of
Yeah.
going and building out coal, we wouldn't be able to do that, given the fact that we don't even have the technology, right? So we have
Yeah.
to buy it. And I mean, the World Bank is not going to finance the purchase of coal
Definitely.
systems anymore. So,
Nobody's going to do that.
in the true sense of the word, we are not transitioning. Where are we transitioning from? We're not. We're not transitioning in the true sense of the word, because we don't have coal-fired plants. So we're actually saying, okay, you know, um, we want to avert and say, let's build towards the renewable side because we are still trying to build. It's like a child that's growing, and it's coming to say, you can choose from part of what you want to become. You could become a doctor, you could become, a lawyer, you could become an engineer.
Yeah.
But as adults, you know that your chances has reduced. So that's the way I say it from the developed countries and the developing countries. So the term, I have a problem with the use of the word transitioning, because I believe we're not transitioning from hydro now that we have to solar, or we are transitioning from gas that we currently use. In fact, we don't have enough. So where are we transitioning from? We're not. We are still evolving. So that's on one side. Now, talking about the current situation now, and how to and the challenges that we might face. I mean, in Nigeria, there's a lot of risk. There are financial risks that you have to deal with. There are forest risks. We just heard, airlines saying, "Hey, we have problem repatriating our funds, so you might have to pay to fly from Nigeria. Even for flights originating from Nigeria, you might have to pay in dollars." And that is because they have lots of naira stacked up in Nigeria, and they're dealing with forex issues. So forex is also a risk. So if we tend to attract financial if we want to tap into the world or global financial markets, they definitely want to ask the question, how do I repatriate my funds, right? And I can't have billions in naira, and I'm struggling with how to repatriate, knowing that there's a lot of forex risks in Nigeria that we see these days, right? I mean, we've seen the dollar and the naira, do all sort of game now. So I mean, that's a huge risk. There are policy risk, right? So how am I going to be sure that that the next government will continue with the same policies? So there are all of these risks that we have in Nigeria you have to deal with, right? But amidst all of this, I believe that um, the businesses that has the chance to grow in Nigeria are those that are able to navigate this entire risks. And but the negative side to this is when you provide services in Nigeria and pricing these services, that's where the problem comes. So how do you price this such that this risk are adequately reflected in what you're pricing? And also, on the other hand, we know that the economic activity is really, really low. So how do you find this where you're pricing adequately at the same time you're able to stay in business as well as your good pricing. On the other hand, you manage your risk, knowing that people don't have a lot of buying power. I mean, that's the kind of challenge that we have to deal with. I mean, I think about all of these things every day, knowing that in a couple of years I'm going to be in Nigeria trying to build out an energy company. So how do I manage all of this risk? And the future, the businesses of the future in Nigeria are those companies that are able to manage all of this pricing in face of the risk that you face in doing business in Nigeria. I
That
mean,
was
I
really,
don't have an answer to that, but
yeah, it's fine. But I mean,
whatever businesses, yeah,
you gave a lot of
whatever
insights, which I
business
think
in
it's been
Nigeria.
really helpful.
Okay, let's
Oh,
go ahead.
sorry. Yeah, I said. I mean, I think that was a lot more insightful than I expected from the question. Okay, so because I think we're really pressed on time now, so just I think I'll lump these two questions together. So one is around the enabling environment. What are this? I mean, assuming you're in front of, say, the world leaders, or I mean, okay, maybe we should come to the local context now. You're in front
Mhm.
of the president, and you need to explain to this guy what he needs to do to help the energy space more favorable, creating a favorable enabling environment. What are the critical factors that you tell the president? These are the sort of things you need to go for. I mean, I don't want to stretch it too much, but even if it's possible, if it's like if you can come up with like some sort of prioritization that, Mr. President, these are what you need to do if you know that you really want this market to scale. And the second question is just asking if, I mean, now advice to entrepreneurs, the sort of facilities or grants they should be looking out for to, if they're just coming up and they want to scale in the industry.
Mm. So, if I was to talk to the government, the first thing I would say is is regulation. right? So is to actually interfere, well, create the right policies that would allow um, um, the energy sector grow. One, two, um, allow the market to be truly free and not interfere with the law with the market. So if by interfering with the market, you distort the market, and distorting the market does not allow um, the full benefit of demand and supply take its toll, because the market is manipulated in any way, pricing, over regulation, and and I would also say that it's also important to make sure that the power sector is handled. The appointment of, say, a minister is technical and not political. So that way the market is truly free, and governed by the pure forces of demand and supply. But by the time you come in and you begin to manipulate the cost of energy, and the companies begin to lose some certain incentives to to want to do certain things, right?
Absolutely.
Because they're going to look at how they're going to recoup their money. And if the market is not as free as it should be, I mean, I don't want to go there and then have someone that's going to, if I'm investing, say, millions of dollars, I don't want someone that's going to come in there and just make a single policy, and my asset are stranded, right? So I would want to have confidence in the system that nobody's going to come and manipulate the system. That it's going to be purely, you know, um, driven by demand and supply. That's on one side. I mean that's definitely what I would say. Transition to private sector, allow create a level playing field. I'm not saying there shouldn't be regulation. There's definitely going to be regulation. These companies are really big and they provide utility. They are provide utility scale, and they need to be regulated. But I mean, it has to be fair, and manipulate whatever the interference from the government or with the market should be very minimal and when necessary. That's what I will say on that, and allow that sector just flourish. On um, on people coming into
Specific
the sector,
opportunities.
on
Yeah, I said on specific.
opportunities,
Yeah. So like
on
grant support and some of those things you could probably put out there for new entrepreneurs coming into the industry that they should or they could possibly explore.
So there's a lot of aid, US aid. There's a lot of Power Africa. So there's a lot of projects that they have and they're doing in Nigeria. Um, DF DFID, I know also, um, and the World Bank. So I know the World Bank is working with a lot of local companies have um, that have a capability to build solar systems, for instance, in Nigeria, and
Truly.
they're particularly interested in rural electrification. That I know for sure, and um, they provide a lot of funds to make that happen to support. So these are kind of places, but starting off and making sure that you're able to have the capacity to develop the capacity, accumulate it over time, and begin to scale. I mean, you don't want to start up the first time and just go straight to World Bank. I started the company 2 months ago, but I want to. They're not going to do that. So you must have to be able
Absolutely.
to, yeah, just to build from scratch and demonstrate it. And yeah, and of course there's also the part of standardization. I mean, part of the reason why solar has thrived here is the fact that I know that if I'm getting solar panels and they tell me the lifetime is 25 years, I know I'm going to get that 25 years. But if I'm buying solar, say from when it's not standardized, when they bring in trash, and I buy panels and I tell my clients that, hey, this panel is going to last you 25 years. this info is going to last you for 10 years, and after 3 years, they make huge investment, millions of naira, and after 2 months or 3 years, they tell me that, hey, this thing is no longer performing. I mean, that's bad for the sector. That creates a very bad outlook, and people are going to be hesitant to make,
Thanks
to
so
make
much. I think we have just 1 more minute to go. So in
right.
that 1 more minute, I think this is just going to be the last question. And looking at your career, looking at your paths so far to where you are right now, the things you've learned, people you've met, things you know right now. If you can go back in time and talk to your younger self, what
Mm.
advice would you give to your younger self?
Well, I should I would have spoken to my younger and say, hey, you know what, get into the private sector as early as possible. So yeah, I spent about 12 years in the public sector. I mean, that's not to say it's not there are not benefits of being there, but I wish I had cut that to say maybe four, and then
For
yeah, four, and then move to the private sector. So yeah, so I think I like the daily challenges, the experimentation. You have an idea and then you say, okay, this is going to be the idea that's going to move this company from point one to point two. You try it out, it works, it doesn't work. You come back again, you have another idea. So it's about testing all of those ideas and seeing what works and what pushes your company from one point to the other.
Okay, I think that takes us to the end of this session. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for the insight, and I think this has been really helpful and quite insightful. There's a lot we've been able to, I mean, you've been able to unpack within this really short time, and look forward to engaging with you more. Yeah, as the sector improves or as the sector progresses. Look forward to engaging you more. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much, and it was nice having me. It was nice